Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dirt Nap City. I'm Kelly, here with my pal Alex. We are both in Texas, but in different cities, but we're hanging out together, and we're having a great day. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing great, Kelly. How you doing?
I am excited that we're going to finish out this season, and we are going to start season 2 next year. But, man, the responses we've been getting from people has been amazing.
Yeah, I apologize. At the beginning of season 1, I made some sort of a crack about we'll start season 2 with me by myself. The finale to season 1 would be of your death.
Right.
And a lot of people are getting worried about that. People have said, oh my gosh, you're starting season 2. Does that mean something happened to Kelly? Kelly's in great health, guys.
Yeah, I am.
Right. So I was wrong about that. Quit emailing about that, though.
I appreciate the concern. I appreciate the thoughts and prayers, all the stuff you guys have been giving us. But we are closing out season 1 with a bang. And I want to tell you, I've got the most interesting person I think we've done so far for us today. And I'm really excited to share this one with you. Of course, as you know, Alex does not know who the person is because it's my episode to choose. You all know because you clicked on the thumbnail and there was probably a picture of this person on the thumbnail, but this person does live in Dirt Nap City and this person is interesting. So you ready to get started?
I am. Can't wait.
All right. So this person was born in 1904 on March 2nd and moved to Dirt Nap City on September 24th, 1991. So 1904 to 1991.
I think we have our first 2-part episode, Kelly.
No way.
This is awesome. I'm really happy about this, though, actually. I'm actually happy because this is an interesting person, and we can both riff on this as much as we want.
Love it. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we're both talking about Orville Redenbacher, right?
That would be awesome. Was he born in Springfield, Mass?
He was. He was an author. He had a pseudonym. No, guys, if you don't know yet, and you already do, we are talking about Theodor Seuss Geisel, and his pen name, of course, was Dr. Seuss. Somehow, both Alex and I picked him, and that's really is kind of cool because I was looking for somebody with sort of a holiday theme, but at the same time, somebody that wasn't Father Christmas or Saint Nicholas, right? And so that's who I came up with. And that's who you came up with.
Yeah, we need to get a statistician on this to find out what the odds, how many people are dead,
Yes.
and of those, how many were interesting.
Right.
And then
right.
what are the odds in a 10-episode season that in season 1 we would end, we wouldn't even get to the 10th person before we had a duplicate.
Well, it's a simple XY axis graph. I mean, you could totally draw this thing. You're a professor, and at some point where they cross. But yeah, he was born, as you said, in Springfield, Massachusetts, the son of Henrietta and Theodor Robert Geisel. And his father actually managed a family brewery and was appointed to the public park system of Springfield, Massachusetts, after the brewery closed because of prohibition. Now, he was of German descent, and he actually experienced a little bit of bullying and prejudice in school because of the outbreak of World War I.
Now, his name Geisel. Did you know that his mother's name
Was Seuss.
You know what his mother's? Yeah, Seuss, but that's not how they pronounced it. Did you know that?
No. How did they pronounce it?
We've been saying it wrong all this time, man. It's Seuss.
Seuss, but spelled with an S at the beginning?
Yeah. I think the actual German pronunciation is Seuss.
Seuss.
And actually, when he used to hang out with his writer buddies, sure we'll get to his time at Dartmouth, but one of his buddies made up a little poem that said, "You're as wrong as the deuce, and you shouldn't rejoice. If you're calling him Seuss, he pronounces it Seuss."
That's awesome. Seuss. So his mother, that was her name. And as you said, he attended Dartmouth College. And that was where he actually wrote for a humor magazine. Do you know the name of the humor magazine?
Was it the Jack-o'-lantern?
The Dartmouth Jack-o'-lantern, yes. And he became the editor-in-chief of the Dartmouth Jack-o'-lantern, but he unfortunately was caught drinking with his friends, and the dean, whose name was Craven Laycock, he said that Geisel had to resign from extracurricular activities, including the Jack-o'-lantern, and that's when he decided to start penning his articles as Seuss.
Yeah, and it wasn't that he was like underage, although he might have been, but drinking was illegal back then. That was during Prohibition.
Yeah, that's also why his father lost his job, right? His father ran a brewery, and his father lost his job and ended up having to work for the Parks Department in Springfield, Massachusetts, because of Prohibition.
I didn't know any of that. But he was drinking gin. I think that's kind of an old man thing to be drinking in college.
You know what they called it when they would get together and drink gin with him, right?
No.
Gin and Seuss. Sipping on gin and Seuss.
Which doesn't sound as good as gin and Seuss.
Seuss, right? But if you're saying Seuss, you're all wrong anyway.
Now, when I say we're saying it wrong, he did not insist that people were saying it wrong. He anglicized that name because he liked the sound. He thought it sounded like Mother Goose. So he embraced that later on. So I don't want anyone going around correcting people. They're saying Dr. Seuss. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, especially kids.
It's not Dr. Seuss.
Will you read me Dr. Seuss? You idiot. It's Dr. Seuss. He ended up graduating from Dartmouth, and then he went to school in England, right? At Oxford, at Lincoln College in Oxford, England. And he was going to get his Doctor of Philosophy. And then he also met his future wife, Helen Palmer, there, who encouraged him to not get his not become a English teacher, which is, I think, what he wanted to do, and actually draw for a living, because she said he always had these great drawings, and she felt like that was his passion. It was unique, and he should really share that with the world.
I mean, obviously, that worked out well for him, but a little sad that he didn't stay and get his degree, just as an educated person myself. But sure.
Well, you always wonder, should we thank Craven Laycock or Helen Palmer for his becoming Dr. Seuss? But maybe it was a combination.
Yeah. Or of the people in this story, who should have changed his name? Theodor Geisel or Craven Laycock?
Laycock. That's debatable. But he did end up not getting his degree, and he moved back to the U.S. in 1927, immediately began submitting writings, drawings, etc. to magazines, and apparently was turned down quite a bit, but eventually got published in the Saturday Evening Post, which was a big deal back in the day, I think. After that publishing, he actually felt, I think he felt like he had kind of tasted success, made a little money off of what he loved doing. Kind of like when we finally monetize this show, right? It's going to be time for us to move to New York City. And he moved to New York City, got a job as an illustrator with the humor magazine Judge, and then started to kind of feel like he had enough money to get married and not actually start a family because he didn't have kids.
No, but have you ever read one of the humor magazines from back in the day? Not very funny. Just humor is something that really is kind of time specific. Barely crack a smile when I read that kind of stuff.
Well, you said crack a smile. So there was Cracked and Mad. Those are really the only two.
That was in the 60s and 70s though. These magazines like Judge and some of the stuff that he was writing is really, I mean, it seems corny to us, but because it seems corny because corny seems old fashioned. But this was like the OG of dad jokes but it was original at the time. So, but you can't possibly read that stuff now and think it's funny. Humor just ages so poorly a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like going back and watching a John Hughes movie, right? It's it's very cringy, a lot of it. And a lot of it's really, really kind of wrong, very misogynistic and racist and all kinds of other stuff that at the time we just didn't think anything of.
And you could say the same about a lot of the Dr. Seuss books too. True.
Well, we will definitely get into that. But as we continue our story, he ended up in 1928. he actually had done a cartoon that mentioned flit. Now, you know what flit was, right?
I don't. I heard of it, but I don't know what it was.
Flit was a bug spray manufactured by Standard Oil Company of New Jersey. And when he had a cartoon that mentioned the bug spray in it, sort of offhandedly. And according to Geisel, Dr. Seuss later, he said that the wife of an advertising executive happened to see the cartoon and urged her husband to sign him. She said, "This is great." And he ended up being the ad man for Flit. He drew a lot of their cartoons, and that kind of got him into Standard Oil. And a lot of his work early in the day, a lot of his work in the early days was for oil companies. I think he did some things for Ford Motor Company. He did a lot of stuff for like oil, gas, and transportation kind of work, which is a little bit ironic considering that he ended up, being, or at least writing books about environmentalism later in life.
Right, yeah. I think that Flit ad was bigger than we can imagine. I think that was a very popular ad. Have you ever heard of the game show back in the day called To Tell the Truth?
Yeah.
You get three people on the stage pretending they're somebody famous, but it's somebody you wouldn't recognize, kind of like our show, basically, but somebody you wouldn't recognize by their face. And
one of them really is famous.
One of them really is. And then they have these celebrity questioners trying to figure out who it is. He was on an episode of that, and I was watching YouTube video. It's pretty cool. And because it's pretty obvious to me which one he is, maybe because I know what he looks like, but only one of the panelists got it right. But at the beginning, they mentioned that he was the original, that he came up with the Flit ad. And like the whole audience gasped, like, oh, that, like they all remembered.
Oh, yeah. Like I saw that. I remember.
Yeah.
That was sitting right next to our toilet for years and years and years. It was the only magazine.
And you say Flit was in the 20s?
That was in 1928.
Yeah, so this To Tell the Truth was like from 1957. So I mean, that's a 30-year-old ad, and people still remembered. It was a radio jingle, probably. It probably wasn't TV.
Well,
or maybe it was print. Might have been print.
I think it was print. I think because I think he was the illustrator in all this. Okay. So it was print. But as I said, what happened from there is he ended up getting into other Standard Oil products, motor oil. Ford Motor Company was one of his clients. Holly Sugar. These were clients that he had. And then, of course, in 1931, he wrote a book that today, just like the humor magazines of yore and the John Hughes movies, the title of this book really doesn't float very well today. You want to tell us what it was called, Alex?
Is this the book called Boners?
It was called Boners, and it was actually in 1931. It topped the nonfiction bestseller list and led to a sequel. You know what that was called?
Was it called More Boners?
Yes. This is not a sound effect, people. This is really me laughing.
Did you know there was a third book? You know what it was called?
Even More?
Still More Boners.
Oh, okay.
Then there was a fourth book called Prize Boners for 1932. Then there was
you're serious about this?
The Omnibus Boners, the second Boners Omnibus, and then my favorite, way later, 1952. They came back to this and wrote a book called Bigger and Better Boners.
So
at that point, I think in 1952, by that time,
the better title.
I think that they knew exactly what they were doing with that title in 1952.
Well, there are copies of this book still available. I just looked it up. I looked up the author Alexander Abingdon, and you can buy a copy of that book from used beginning at $4.
No thanks.
You don't want to have that book laying around your house.
I feel bad that I even Googled it.
I know just think what's coming up in your search now. All these little ads and stuff, all this Viagra.
For during World War II, though, even though this book had already been out for like 15, years, there was 1 million copies sold by 1945. It was one of the best selling paperbacks of World War II. Like every soldier had this book, and they were just little stupid little sayings. Again,
Yeah.
not very funny.
Yeah.
Do you know any examples of this in this book?
You can't change the direction of the wind, but you can reset your sails.
Really, is that one of them?
No, I have no
No.
idea.
Like a man who marries twice commits bigotry.
Bigotry. I don't
Instead
get
of bigamy. Just like
it.
they were like things that kids, like maybe school kids, say like accidentally. Like a
Wow.
virgin forest is a forest in which the hand of man has never set foot.
Wow. That's
I
actually a
told you,
quote
man.
from the book?
Yeah, that's what passes for humor. That was 1 million copies sold back then.
Now, wasn't there a show called Kids Say the Darndest Things or something like that? Was this based on boners?
Way better title than boners.
Yeah. Well, I mean, was it? Because the book sold millions of copies, you know? If it had been called something else, maybe it wouldn't have. I think a lot of people ordered it by mistake. That's honestly what I think happened.
I think they called it.
I think they sent it to all those soldiers in World War II thinking it was more of a, they're away from their wives kind of thing. And yeah, that's what I thought it was. But I think somebody in the procurement office in the government really made a big mistake.
Well, originally it was called Kids Make the Biggest Boners.
And that one wouldn't fly. And people, if you're going to pull random quotes from this show, don't pull that one. But if you do pull it, remember Alex said it. So after the boners debacle and the more boners debacle and the even bigger boners debacle, oh, we're such children. In 1936, Geisel and his wife were returning from an ocean voyage, and he said that the rhythm of the ship's engine is what inspired a poem that later became his first children's book, and To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street.
Do you know this book?
That's actually one I don't know that well. I know of it, but that's not one. It's like him walking down the street and seeing things, right?
Yeah, I don't know it that well. I mean, if you said the name of it, I probably would have said that he wrote it, but I can't tell you anything about it. Really, no.
I think I might have it. I have a big stack of Dr. Seuss books that we had for my kids. Maybe I'll go grab them in a minute and and show it, because that works really well in podcasts. But as far as the varied accounts, that book was actually rejected. Geisel said over the years, sometimes he said it was 20, and he said up to 43 publishers rejected that book before someone actually took to it and decided to do it. He actually had given up. He was very close to giving up when he ran into a classmate from Dartmouth who was able to get it published by Vanguard Press. He wrote 4 more books before the U.S. entered World War II, including the 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins, as well as the King's Stills and the 7 Lady Godivas. Now, I'd never heard of any of those.
You know about the 7 Lady Godivas?
I don't.
That was his try at an adult book.
Really?
And it was a failure. It only sold 2,500 copies. Now, we'd already said that the Boners book had sold 1 million copies, right?
Wow, yeah.
And he wasn't writing in he was just illustrating in that Boners book. He wrote this 7 Lady Godivas, and it was had nudity throughout. It was about 7 sisters who never wear clothing. And the reason, they didn't really say why, other than they wanted to be themselves and they didn't want to disguise it. But the book was $2, which during the Great Depression was a lot.
That was like a month's worth of food.
And it was like, it had nudity on every page. It was just drawings of naked women.
See, that's what they should have sent the soldiers, right? Yeah,
right. This is, exactly. But later he said the reason it was a failure, this is his quote, "It was all full of naked women, and I can't draw convincing naked women. I put their this is what he said, I put their knees in the wrong places."
It's the algebra that got me.
"I tried to draw the sexiest women I could, but they came out just ridiculous." And
Wow.
after that experience, he decided he was just going to write for kids. He said he'd rather write for kids because they were more appreciative. I think the was this failure of the Lady Godiva's really hit him hard. Um, and he said about adults later, he said, adults are obsolete children, and to hell with them.
Wow. Wow. That's a good quote.
Yeah, and they, of course, he never had kids,
Right. And he had a
but
great quote
really,
about that. Did you ever hear that quote about not having kids?
you have them, and I'll entertain them.
Yes. Yes. I thought that was a really good quote.
Yeah, so the only other adult book that he ever wrote, and we're using term adult book, not in the
Yeah. Not in
adult
the
bookstore
not
sense. No,
pornography
no,
sense. Although there
but
were naked women in it. So
true. He didn't write another book for adults until 1986, at the end of his life, about being old, called "You're Only Old Once," and the subtitle of that book was actually a book for obsolete children. And he just took that
oh.
that idea of adults are just obsolete children. Children are like the ideal, and once they become adults, they are kind of no use to him at all, in terms of being consumers of his art. So that Lady Godiva thing really, I think, hit him because he was on a pretty good winning streak until then.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
everything he was touching was doing really well, but that really hit him hard. And his illustrations are very appealing to children. And
Yeah, the style. I mean, the giant exaggerated features on animals, the giant exaggerated features on people type things, and who's and witsits and bitsits and yitsits and all that stuff. And of course the rhyming, right? That's the other thing, that just the sort of poetic nature of the way that he would take words. As a matter of fact, a little story about The Cat in the Hat. Do you know the story about how that book was written?
I do, but why don't you tell us?
Yeah. So apparently there was a big kerfuffle about the fact that American school children had bad vocabularies. They didn't like to read because children's books were boring at the time. Today, our kids would say they were awkward, but back then it was boring. And he was given a set of words. I think it was 348 words, and was asked to write a book using those words because they were words that were essential for a first grader's vocabulary. He cut that down to 250 words, and in 9 months, he wrote The Cat in the Hat. And he had his drawing style, he had his verse and his rhymes and everything else, and that really kind of was a big hit. Not only because it was an entertaining book, but it used those vocabulary words. It was interesting to children, and it taught them vocabulary.
I love the idea that it's a challenge to take a list of 348 words and try to make them into or cut them down to 250 and try to make a book only using those words. I love that in terms of a creative exercise. It probably made it relatively easy to write a book that way. When you hear stories about people that write Christmas music, for example, most of the Christmas songs that we enjoy, you'll hear people say that they wrote it in 10 minutes, half an hour. And the reason is because they have they're limited as to there's only so many words you can use in a Christmas song, right? You can probably list them out right now, but so it constrains you as to the words you can write. And that's why it's real easy to write songs when as opposed to write a love song. There's so many different synonyms for all the different things. But for Christmas and winter, there's only so many.
Yeah.
And I think this was kind of the same thing. It's like, all right, you can only use these 250 words. Probably made it pretty easy. And then you see of those, which ones rhyme.
Yeah.
I think either one of us could have written Cat in the Hat if presented that challenge.
Oh, yeah. I think it might have been The Dog on the Log, because I'm more of a dog guy, but yes.
And if you weren't good at it, it'd probably be The Dog in the Hat.
Yeah, so that was quite a little exercise. And so just a little bit of a tangent here. Have you ever heard Alphabet Aerobics?
No.
By the band Blackalicious?
No.
When we get off this call, you should go look that up. It's A to Z, a rap that goes from A to Z with all these words, every a bunch of words that begin with A, a bunch of words that begin with B. It's really well done. And
for children?
It could be. It's not. There's no profanity or anything like that in it. But again, it's taking not necessarily a set of words, but taking a parameter and then writing around it that I think is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to World War II for a second.
Okay.
Do you remember anything about a film that he was involved in during World War II?
Would this be Designed for Death?
Yes. There's quite a bit of talk about that online, and
Man, I just watched a YouTube video that had clip of this. Have you seen this?
no, I haven't seen that YouTube video. What was the clip of?
It was of the so before Designed for Death, there was a short 15-minute movie,
Like a training video that the government did,
exactly,
right?
for soldiers that were about to go fight the Japanese. Very disturbing from today's sensibilities. I mean, it was telling our soldiers about, the part I watched said,
Their
look,
culture.
yeah, well, it basically said, look, when they were born, they weren't this way. And they were just like the rest of us, they meaning Japanese people. And they got brainwashed to thinking that they could take over the world. But the Japanese brain could actually be used for good things. And that's it was about what to do with it wasn't about fighting the Japanese. It was about what to do with post-war Japanese and post-war Japan.
The ones that were being interred or held in internment camps.
And he was pro internment, by the way.
Yeah.
He was for basically everything the FDR was for. He was a big time liberal Democrat, big New Deal guy, and basically an FDR guy, anti-isolationist. But this Designed for Death actually won an Academy Award for Best Documentary.
Wow.
In 1947. But it was a U.S. propaganda film, basically.
Well, and quick shout out to the Eleanor Roosevelt episode. If you want to know about FDR and Eleanor, check out that episode.
We'll never really talk about FDR. We'll just talk about all the people in his orbit, right?
Right. He's a reoccurring minor character in all of these episodes. But
exactly.
I did know that he was a Democrat and a supporter of FDR, and that he did support internment of the Japanese during or after World War II, or during World War II, actually, because people were afraid they were going to come in and kill other people. But he actually said something to the effect, and I think I can kind of understand this. I'm not saying I support it or I believe in it, but I can understand, if your country is at war with another nation, you just kind of put all those people into a bucket and say, I don't trust them. And I think that's essentially what he said is, I don't trust him. And then I think later he did try to sort of make up for that with a couple of his books. Wasn't Horton Hears a Who was all about like an allegory about that?
Yeah, I think there's room for redemption there. Certainly internment is one of the most shameful things that this country's ever done. And I think over time, he started to realize that. And that's why he wrote a book, Horton Hears a Who. It's which is an allegory. He wrote a lot in allegory, right? Not so much messages, not so much morals, or moral of the story. He hated that, but he definitely wrote in allegories, and just pretty much every one of his books has something to do with something that was going on at the time, which is really amazing that still today a lot of those books resonate with other things that we face, kind of history repeating itself. So Horton Hears a Who, we don't think about Japanese internment when we see it, but we definitely see other instances of race relations, for example, that we have in this country. When we see Horton Hears a Who. So,
well, it's kind of the beauty of a good allegory is that it can evolve over time. The story is the same, but the meaning, and how you draw analogies to other things in life actually change, right? And so I think that's a testament to how good of an actual writer he was, not just an illustrator, but the content itself, and how it has survived. And I will say, every so often my kids and I will sit down and we will read a old book that we have. Sometimes they're Dr. Seuss, sometimes they're others. Like we always do Bears Christmas at Christmas, if you remember the Berenstain Bears. But but we'll do that. And the books are still fascinating. They're still super interesting. The Butter Battle book. Do you remember that one?
I don't know. No, I have it on my list here, but I've never heard of that.
That was from 1984. And that one was basically about escalation of war. So each side, like one side prefers their butter on the top of their toast and the other side likes it on the bottom of their toast. And they each sort of have to outdo the other side, so they get bigger butter and bigger toast, and they start throwing them over the wall to the other city with catapults. And pretty soon they're in this massive war that's escalated out of control. And it's just showing that those things can escalate really quickly.
Just shows how absurd it all is, huh?
Yeah, and it's about something as silly as butter, just like things we've fought wars about that are almost as silly. Sure. So, and I don't know. There was also a book called Fox and Socks. I'm going to look real quick and see if Fox and Socks was actually written by Dr. Seuss.
It was 1965.
Okay, that was one of my favorites. I don't know if you ever read that one, but there are so many great rhymes in that book, and there is a part about Tweedlebeetles. Have you read Fox and Socks?
I can't. I don't know. I can't quote any of it.
Well, okay. When a Tweedlebeetle, this is from memory. I don't have this typed out. When a Tweedlebeetle when Tweedlebeetles fight, it's called a Tweedlebeetle battle. And when Tweedlebeetles fight in a bottle, it's called a Tweedlebeetle bottle battle. And when Tweedlebeetles fight in a bottle and the bottle's on a poodle and the poodle's eating noodles, this is where this rhyme goes, and it's so awesome. I absolutely my favorite part of that book, and probably my favorite section of any Dr. Seuss book.
I wonder if Eminem at all was influenced by Dr. Seuss.
Or
the way hearing
probably,
you do that,
probably more influenced by Chef Boyardee, with Mom Spaghetti.
Just hearing you do that kind of reminds me of the way Eminem kind of
the way he flows.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
A Tweedlebeetle fights, it's a Tweedlebeetle battle. That's not really him, but when a Tweedlebeetle fights, it's a Tweedle. I can't do Eminem.
He does it so fast, and you could picture somebody doing that. Yeah. What other? You've mentioned a lot of them. What other Dr. Seuss books do you remember? I mean, we got The Grinch for sure, right?
Okay, I'm going to also look up real quick. Go Dog Go. I don't think that was by Dr. Seuss. That was P.D. Eastman.
Yeah, see, P.D. Eastman would be what you call a opportunist, right?
But they had a similar vibe, right?
I mean, I guess you could say, Fun with Dick and Jane had a similar vibe, but it wasn't like the Seuss.
No, because that was about real people. Go Dog Go was about these dogs that drove cars. It was sort of a fantasy, really crazy kind of situation. And then the illustration style of Go Dog Go, you know the book. They're all in a big tree having a party. You remember Go Dog Go? Oh man, that was another one but it's not Dr. Seuss. It was P.D. Eastman, but I think it's often confused with Dr. Seuss because I think a lot of times you'll have that book and it actually has the Cat in the Hat logo on it. It's like Brighton Early Books or something like that. It was a label, a book I can read by myself.
Would you say that P.D. Eastman was the Franco-American?
Right.
To Dr. Seuss's Chef Boyardee.
Absolutely.
So Horton Hatches the Egg came out in 1940, and then Horton Hears a Who didn't come out till 1954, which I thought is odd because that means that the children were 14 years older when that came out. So it was for an entirely different generation. Yeah. Which I think is the tricky part about being a children's author is that you identify with that particular generation and then they all get older. So whether you're talking about modern Harry Potter or Diary of a Wimpy Kid or those kind of books, your market ages out of your stuff and you have to appeal to the next cohort that's coming along. And I think that's very hard to do. And I think Dr. Seuss did a great job. I mean, he was writing children's books for 60 years.
You can appeal to the parents and you can appeal to their nostalgia, right? So part of the reason I like to read Dr. Seuss to my children is because that appeals to the nostalgia that I have for hearing it when I was a kid, right? And so and also so much of the nonsensical stuff isn't time specific, right? It isn't like stuck in a certain time period because he's referencing a certain person or certain technology or whatever, or, bad humor of the day, like we were talking about earlier. It's when you're in these nonsensical imaginary lands, they're timeless. And so that's another, I doubt he did that on purpose, but I think it's another reason why his books are so enduring over the years, because they are truly timeless.
Yeah, and I think there's some kind of brain chemistry that rhyming is always soothing to the ears. And
Yep.
rhyming with silly words is always fun. And when you're just learning to read, it's fun. Like you said, some of the books, like Cat in a Hat, are meant for you to read by yourself. Other books uh, are better when your parents read them to you, like the Sneetches, for example. And some of these words with some of these complicated, nonsensical words would be hard for a first grader to read by him or herself. But having your parents read it to you is fun, and you can kind of go back and forth in these books. It's just brilliant. Like I said, I don't know if he knew this from the beginning, but it certainly worked, and this stuff will last for a long time. The one that we used to always get a kick out of was a book called The Sleep Book. Have you ever heard of that book?
I have heard of it. I don't know anything
We
about
read it. We read it to our son every single night as part of the ritual, the bedtime ritual, and we knew it so well that, well, today the book is completely, ripped and just dog-eared and all that. But I really don't know why, because after a while we didn't even need the book. We
Right.
just knew that thing by heart so well. And even today, if I can throw my wife a couple of lines and she'll come back and just, after not thinking, like an old song that
Yeah.
used to know.
It's
Tickles that part of the brain, right?
I was going to say it's written itself onto your hard drive. It's like,
Mhm.
you can access it still. It wasn't in random access memory that goes away when you fall asleep. It's written to your hard drive. So throw us a quote from the Sleep Book.
I
give
don't
us a
have it
little.
in front of me, man. I don't have it in front of me.
You just said it like the back of your head.
I said, if you throw my wife a line,
You just said you read it so much you didn't need it anymore.
that was 18 years ago, man.
Oh, all right. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was in a place called Van Vleck.
Van Vleck. That's where the Sleep Book took place.
Right. So it started, the news just came in from the county of Keck that a very small bug by the name of Van Vleck is yawning so wide you can look down his neck. This may not seem very important, I know, but it is. So I'm bothering telling you so. And then it just went on, which
Wow.
kind of crazy.
I've never read that book, so this is all news to me.
Yeah, it was just about going to sleep.
Yeah.
The whole thing was about how these people are trying to go to sleep and they can't, which, I would like to tell you it made my son go to sleep, but all it did was made us go to sleep.
Right.
We would
right.
doze off and he'd be wide awake.
Right.
Um,
He's jumping on the bed like Van Vleck, Van Vleck. Well, that's awesome. I mean, I do think there are so many people of our generation, earlier generations, and now later generations that have a relationship with the books that Dr. Seuss wrote, and I do think there is this general, sometimes misconception perhaps, or sensationalism about the thing that we were talking about earlier with the internment of the Japanese and some of the political things that he said. I think people like to just, I heard he was a racist. They like to just generalize that sort of thing. And I don't really believe that's true based on what I've read about him. Not at all true, but it's unfortunate that sometimes that's just what people latch on to. Oh yeah, I heard he was a racist, and so he definitely had some thoughts and some things he said that were probably not very smart and not very kind and not very well received. But I think he, in the end, realized those were wrong and took it to a better place and apologized and, did all the things you do. And at the end of the day, it touched so many people's lives in a positive way that I'm certainly able to look past those things that he said, in his days during the war.
Let's put something else to rest. He has not been canceled. All right. He's recently kind of been a hero of the right for somebody who has been canceled for that stuff. He has not been canceled. His estate, so his relatives and people that publish his books, have decided that because of some of the more unfortunate drawings of particularly Asian people, that's the woman that has a big problem. And like we said, he got his start kind of drawing pictures during World War II, drawing political cartoons. He carried a lot of that drawing over, and there's a lot of drawings in there that are insensitive. So his estate has decided to stop publishing those, to retire, as they call it, retire those books. Nobody canceled him. The government didn't cancel him. Nobody, Biden didn't cancel him. It's not.
Thanks, Obama.
No, he's not canceled. He's just they've just looking at this stuff in the light of today. It makes sense to not keep putting the stuff out there. But nobody's canceling Dr. Seuss, and he shouldn't be some sort of First Amendment hero because he's not alive anymore, and he probably, like you said, would regret the way a lot of this stuff is put out there.
Yeah.
Did you know though that his estate, Dr. Seuss, made $32 million in 2022?
Wow.
So I ran across a list that you might be interested in. This is a total fodder for Dirt Nap City, I think. This is a list of the highest paid dead celebrities of 2022.
Okay.
So these would be...
This is right up our alley.
So in Dirt Nap City, these are the people that are living in the high rent district.
Right.
The top 10 so this is money that they made in 2022.
After already being dead.
I will tell you that Dr. Seuss is number 8 on the list of the highest paid dead celebrities.
Number 1 being the most money?
Most money. The most.
So he's at the bottom of this list of the top 10.
Now remember, this isn't cumulative since they died. This is in just 2022.
Yeah. All right. One year value.
Number 1 on this list made $500 million this year.
Jesus. Is it Jesus?
No. No.
Start with number 10.
Okay. Number 10 is also an author that made $24 million in 2022.
Am I supposed to guess?
I will tell you that.
Who wrote The Great Gatsby?
His name, no. This guy's name is Charles Schulz.
Charles Schulz. It's really funny. Probably you and I think alike. That was a person I considered actually doing for this episode.
No, I never considered him.
Okay, Charles Schulz.
Number 9.
Peanuts.
I need a reason for number 9. Number 9 is actually a studio session drummer named Jeff Porcaro that actually died like 30 years ago. He was a drummer for huge hits of the 70s. Pretty much every song that you know from the like soft rock kind of Toto and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know what they call that, right? It's called yacht rock.
Yeah, yacht rock. Right, exactly. He was a drummer. He made $25 million in 2022 and died in 1991.
Well, you know why? I mean, because he gets a residual for every one of those songs. And every time,
just crazy.
Every time you listen to Rosanna on Spotify, that guy's estate gets 25 cents,
Well, I have not been putting anything into this guy's coffers. I'll tell you that. Dr. Seuss is number 8. Number 7 is the musician Leonard Cohen.
Oh, wow.
55 million. Number 6, Michael Jackson, 75 million.
Okay.
Number 5, $100 million, James Brown.
Wow. Is he dead?
Yeah.
Oh.
Number 4, Elvis, 110 million.
That makes sense.
Number 3, David Bowie, $250 million in 2022.
I would have honestly thought that Michael Jackson would be above David Bowie and Elvis, but maybe he got a little bit canceled.
Yeah. It's amazing that he still makes as much as he does.
Well, it's actually just kind of funny now when I hear a song on the radio, I because they're great songs, right? I mean, they're still great songs, but you just it's like I always have a little bit of a pause when I hear it. I'm like, oh, radio's playing Michael Jackson again. That's good, I guess.
Number two died 2 years ago. Is all the basketball player Kobe Bryant.
Kobe
Kobe
Bryant.
Bryant.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
$400 million. Still, they're still selling Kobe shoes. Nike is, so that
Yeah,
equates
and
pretty well.
and you know, I think he's still really relevant to this generation, and
Absolutely, yeah.
seen as a bit of a hero. And so I think he'll. I don't think he'll stand the test of time as much as some of the other people on the list, but that's just my guess.
Number one, $500 million in 2022. You want to take a guess? An author.
An author. Oh no, she's not dead. I was going to say J.K. Rowling. $500 million in 2022. Initials
Goes by initials.
P.D. Eastman.
Wouldn't that be great if Pete Eastman was bringing in 500 billion a year for Hop on Pop or whatever you said?
Yeah. What is it? Who is it?
J.R.R. Tolkien,
J.R.R.R.R. Tolkien. Wow.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense because that's really popular right now. There's all kinds of series and spin-offs and
All right. So, what I would like to know is what did we love about Dr. Seuss? Well, first of all, do you think of him as a cartoonist or as a poet? What
uh,
comes first, do you think? What was his talent?
illustration first and poetry second. I think I based on what I know about him already and also what I've learned from this episode, I think he was kind of a doodler and a sketcher and an artistic guy early on, and then he started writing to catch up with the art. I mean, that was one of the things his wife said. Helen Palmer Geisel said that he would doodle all the time, and she thought it was really great and encouraged it. So I thought he was an illustrator first. Long-winded answer, illustrator.
No, I think you're right. What do you think made his cartoons so much fun to look at? For me, it was the machines. I liked all the little
Oh,
machines, the
yeah.
little bicycles that had symbols on them, and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
all the really complicated machines that he used to
The
to
sort of
have. And
what were those things called when you push one thing and it hits something else? Rube Goldberg machines.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he would always have fun names from like the Doodlers and the Swindlers and
Yeah.
those kind of things, and they always seemed to be also in motion, like they were all bicycles or cars
Yeah, they
or
didn't just sit there,
something.
or they were making something. It'd be like something that were a vat, and something would come out of the vat. It's interesting you say that though, because if you had asked me, like if you hadn't said that, I would have said it was more the sort of organic and biological aspects of the drawing, meaning the exaggerated features on animals and the wings. Like they always had really interesting wings on birds, and the sort of long beaks that the birds had, and they kind of showed sharpness, but at the same time they were approachable. They weren't. None of the animals were scary. And the eyes on all of his animals were very. All of his creatures, the humanoid creatures and the non-humanoid creatures, were always very empathetic. Like you didn't feel like that thing was going to eat you.
Yeah, that's true. That's kind of like the Muppets are like that.
Yeah,
They make monsters, but they're not scary.
yeah. They're not. They'll take your cookie and maybe throw some trash around, but they're not going to kill you.
And very few humans. It seems like all of the humans in his books are kind of the copy and paste variety, where it'd be like 9 people that look exactly the same, kind of standing in a row.
Right,
Um,
right. That's a good
but never the
observation.
stars of the never the stars of the unless
Whereas
they're children.
the animals always look different. You're right, and they children are empowered, whereas the adults are kind of dolts. They're
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
expired, or what did you say? He said
obsolete.
obsolete. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well. So why did you pick him for this particular episode?
Well, first, like you said earlier, the Christmas tie-in. That was immediately when I was thinking of something that was kind of like you wanted to do Harry Houdini for Halloween, and I thought, well, who would be a good Christmas person that's not too on the nose? I didn't want to really do Saint Nicholas. I was thinking about Bing Crosby and Irving Berlin and some of those people. We haven't really hit a lot of musicians yet. So I was thinking that this is a pretty good Christmas adjacent person that I knew that you would know, right? So it would be somebody we both be able to identify with, like we've already talked about, not just when we were kids, but having kids. I think you have a renewed relationship with Dr. Seuss once you have kids. So I thought it would just be kind of somebody that would be good for us to both talk about.
So in kind of closing out his legacy, unfortunately, his wife committed suicide, and I think she was suffering from cancer. And I don't know any circumstances behind it other than she was suffering, and so he remarried. His wife Helen Palmer passed away, and he remarried a woman named Audrey Diamond, and I think she managed his estate after he died, and now she's passed away as well, right?
Yeah, relatively recently too. I think so. Now I think somebody else manages his estate. I think it's family, but he never had any kids. But it's. I think they take good care of his estate, and I think the people that are entrusted with it. Just because I remember of all this controversial stuff, that the people take him very seriously. Kind of like the Fred Rogers estate
Yeah,
is they're entrusted with this legacy that they have to protect.
yeah. He didn't do quite as good a job of having a perfect, untarnished record as Mr. Rogers did, but he did a lot of good in the world, and people feel like they are, like you said, entrusted to not let that become something negative or canceled or whatever people want to say. Don't weaponize Mr. Rogers. Don't weaponize Dr. Seuss. That's not. Don't politicize them. Don't weaponize them. Make them. They were meant to be sort of humanity, and not red or blue or left, right, or
Yeah.
whatever.
I wonder what kind of relationship they had with each other. They were contemporaries. They were
True.
both really present in most children's life, but kind of seems like they kind of had different ideas about what kids were, and I think it'd be interesting. I don't know if they ever met, but I'm not even sure they came at it from the same perspective about children. It'd be interesting to see if they've ever had a conversation.
Well, I think that would make some great fan fiction.
By the way, I did look at that. Take a second look at the Colonel Sanders Chef Boyardee. I called it fan fiction before. It was actually worse than that. It was actually a video game. It was actually a video game that was produced by KFC, and Chef Boyardee was in there somehow. And
Nice.
again, I couldn't watch it. I tried to watch it, and it was just me watching kind of like a Twitch video of a guy playing the game, and I just couldn't do it. I have a present for you.
Okay.
If we want to wrap this up.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always up for that.
So I was really trying to figure out what about the poetry of Dr. Seuss that was appealing. The rhythm, what that rhythm was, and I tried to see if I could duplicate Dr. Seuss. So I've written a poem to kick
Oh,
off the end of season 1 of Dirt Nap City in the style of Dr. Seuss, and I hope you like
you want me to beatbox while you say it?
it. Please don't. You ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
A little nervous, Kelly.
I'm excited.
All right, here we go. Eleanor Roosevelt wasn't so pretty. I heard that today on Dirt Nap City. What's Dirt Nap City, you ask? Well, I suggest it's a place where dead people are here to impress. Gather round, all my friends, come one and come all. Hurry up, watch your step, and please don't fall. Watch your legs, watch your arms, watch your butt, watch your head. We're here for interesting folks who are clinically dead. We will start over here. He's first but not least. By the name of Andre, he's really a beast. He's a giant, they say, over 7 feet tall, lived in North Carolina, but didn't talk with a drawl. Because he was French, yes, he was, like a fry, don't you see? You might even know him from the WWE. Look over there in the white coat and the beard. I'm finding this podcast awfully weird. He's a chicken man who has trouble with math. You'll find his restaurants on every path. Now, I wouldn't say that the colonel had class, but if I dissed him too hard, he'd put a cap in my ass. And hey, everyone, it's our favorite magician. He's in handcuffs. You might say it's his favorite position. When he died, he was said to have bled from the punch of one Monsieur Jocelyn Whitehead. And if you think that appendicitis is bad, you've never been hanging out on the launch pad with Evel Knievel when he's about to break every bone in his body in the river of snakes. He was a badass in every sense of the word, out on his Harley, where he soared like a bird. Yeah, he drank, then he smoked, and he was always breaking his spine, but he lived pretty hard till he was 69. Mr. Rogers used to be Fat Freddy, you see. He kept his weight at 143. A wonderful man who we didn't deserve, so his songs and his shows we will have to preserve. And the Pilgrims, well, it's all complicated, and to tell you the truth, a little dated. But suffice it to say, there's a man overboard, and if he hadn't made it, well, praise the Lord that he did, because me and 2 million other civilians wouldn't be here now, simply just chilling. Am I done? Oh no, I forgot about Boyardee. Not the liquor, you have him confused with Bacardi, who as a child, well, he played with a whisk, and as an adult, cooked tomato bisque. What'd he do? Well, he made forkable food. I guess you can say he's a notable dude. Which brings us right back to our Dr. Seuss, who kind of seems like a sillier goose than most of the folks that we've seen come and go on Kelly's and my little internet show. This city is littered with interesting folks. Some have been shot and some have been choked, and some of them run over by cars, but all of them live up by the stars. And we hear your requests. Calm down, Alfred, you hoss. Eventually, we will get to your precious Bob Ross. And we may even one day do Conway Twitty. Stay tuned for season 2 of Dirt Nap City.
Yes. Wow. Holy moly. That is a work of art. I think that's our trailer. That's the show trailer right there. A little collage. Dude, thank you. That is the best Christmas present I have received so far this year on December, whatever it is. I really appreciate it. And Alex, I appreciate you. This has been fun. Guys, this is our last episode for season 1. I'm going to start rhyming. I'm going to start caring. And Alex and I next year will be sharing some more little stories about the Dirt Nap and the people who live there. We won't take any crap, but we will give you some. I don't know where I'm going with this, but
You're trying to freestyle this?
I'm trying to freestyle it. Guys, season 1 has been a blast. All 9 episodes are available. Tell your friends, tell your family. We'll have t-shirts soon. And also, I've been trying to come up with a common email address for the two of us. Now, I have actually received some real legit emails. One particularly from a guy in Austin who happened to have found us and wrote a very kind email. But I want to come up with an email that we both get. And here's what I was thinking. What do you think about not yet at Dirt Nap City?
Okay. Not yet. What's
Not
the
yet.
thinking behind that?
Not yet at Dirt Nap City.
Not yet. Why not yet?
Because we're still alive. At Dirt Nap City.
Not yet at Dirt Nap City. Yeah. The guy in Austin, was his name Alfred?
No. It was a second fan of the show. It's a legit email. I'll forward it to you. Yeah,
I don't know why you keep saying legit emails. All the emails that we've been reading have been legit.
Well, Alfred's like a super fan, so we get emails from him all the time. But yes, Alfred, we will get to Bob Ross. And funny enough, I was actually with Alfred at a concert on Monday night. We went to see Modest Mouse, and he was with a friend of his he's known a long time, and I was with a friend of mine I've known a long time. The four of us went, and we were talking about Dirt Nap City, and he very quickly said, "It's a great show, but they don't take requests."
That's right. That's right.
So, Alex, thank you very much. Guys, we will be publishing first episode of season 2 in January. I'm pretty confident that one won't be a double, but this is pretty amazing that we both picked the same person, although I kind of see how we got there. I think our thinking was the same. Like you said, I didn't want to be too literal or too spot on for Christmas, but I do wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate this time of year.
We'll be back in January with a double episode of Martin Luther King.
Right. Well, thank you all again. And Alex, thank you. I hope you have a great holiday, and I'm looking forward to season 2. Everyone be sure to tune in to our favorite city in the world that's not in the world, Dirt Nap City.
Bye.